Welcome to Hindsight, the podcast where we uncover the lessons learned, the wisdom gained, and the pivotal moments that shaped how leaders, advisors, and professionals navigate their industries today. I'm Dave Diebold, and in every episode, we sit down with remarkable individuals to explore the experiences that, looking back, changed everything. Because let's be honest, who hasn't thought, I wish I knew then what I know now? I'm joining special guests and friends who will share their journey and turning points that redefine their approach and the insights that continue to guide them today. Let's dive in. Okay. Kev, I have to say this is one that I've been actually really looking forward to, so thanks for joining today.
Yeah, you bet.
I would have thought that I would have had to have done a bunch of research on yourself and thinking about this is like, I already know this individual so well, and a near and dear friend and an adventurer. I've read both your books, and we've had endless hours of laughter and banter, and so I'm really excited to hear one about what you've got coming down the pipe. I definitely want to hear more about this challenge you have on the go. I'm a little bit in the dark as to this consulting where you take the adventure world in yourself. Like you're a very accomplished individual. You're a professional architect. You're actually a consultant. You go and you effectively mentor leaders and how the outdoor world transcends into the professional business world. I want to hear more about that. And again, of course, maybe we're going to also talk a little bit about your book, some of the challenges in your book. I'd love to talk about some of those excerpts. So I'll start off by saying, what got you into architecture? I want to go back a little bit before we dive into the forward part.
What got me into architecture? It's interesting. Back in high school, you do those, it's not a test, but it's an evaluation of what you should want to do. Like, I always thought I wanted to be an architect. It was in my head.
Like an aptitude
test.
Yes.
But I always wanted to be. It was in the back of my mind because I was artistic, yet I seemed to enjoy math and science and all that stuff. So, I was being told, well, architecture is perfect for that. I had no idea what architecture was. It just was this idea. And I did one of those particular tests, and it came back saying you should be an architect. And I did another one that said you should be an architect. So without really thinking of it, you're 16 years old, 17 years old, and you just, I'll go into architecture. So I went into architecture and at McGill University. And it's a crazy course, like really intense. But you're young and you do it. And I enjoyed it. And I came out the other end. Actually, I graduated top of my class at McGill, and my career was kind of set. So it was really kind of a passion from childhood that I carried through, I guess, into adulthood. But looking back on it now, I guess I would still do it, I suppose. But it's I wish I knew more back then what it really was about, because I didn't, and you just kind of have that, maybe I just had that attitude back then, is just, I'll keep pushing through, just keep driving forward, which is maybe my personality, but I'll really stopping and reflecting on, hold on a moment here, what am I doing? Maybe I should just pause for a moment and think, is this exactly where I want to go? So yeah, that's always been sitting with me all these years, even to this day.
Well, I think you're being quite understated. And when you look at, you've been featured in Dwell magazine, with what do you call it, the Wing House?
I call it Wing Spread House.
I look at you as a purist when it comes to architecture and your view of something. Again, you actually designed our kitchen, and the amount of mental energy you devote to something. You look at something and you really put your heart and soul into a product, irrespective if you're not looking for the Arthur Erickson recognition on something. You're looking for, I think what you say, at the end of the day, you're judged on the quality of your job. And if you don't put your heart into something, and you really do, I see you put that mental energy into it, like a painter would on a canvas.
Yeah, well, I'd say that's an attitude that I would encourage anyone to have, is that if you're going to do anything, why not do it well? Like, really, otherwise, why even do it? And that's always been my attitude with anything I do, is I'll do the best I can at it, given the opportunity to do something. Architecture is an amazing profession in that way. I just do single family residential homes. Now I've done everything over the years, but I'm just working for myself, and I find that really quite enjoyable. But you have a client who comes to you and puts absolute confidence and responsibility on you, and a lot of money that they're going to be putting out to build something, their dream in many ways. So you facilitate their dream, you make it happen. And that's a big responsibility in many ways, and a really exciting one. But also it's one of these things that, like, if you're a painter, it's very satisfying. You have a painting on the wall in someone's home. If you write a book, it's tactile. It's something, if someone can read it, it's there, it's on a shelf. When you're an architect, you build a building, it's out on the street, and everyone sees it, and it'll outlast you in many ways. My buildings will be around a lot longer than I'm going to be around, right? So you want to make sure they're good. It's really kind of your legacy in many ways. So there's that, I guess, ego side of it, but there's also the other side that I want the clients to be happy. I want, they come to you wanting you to make their dream, and you have that opportunity to do so. And there's nothing more satisfying than having a client saying they're so happy. And that happened recently, where a client just texted me out of the blue, saying, "I can't believe I was just up in the living space looking out, and I'm so happy we picked you as our architect." And like something like that really makes your day. It's like, yeah, that's why I do it.
So I want to transition that to the adventure side, because I look at the architectural side as the safe space. You're in an office environment, you're drawing, you're creating, and then you put down the pencil and you go outside and you say, I'm going to go cross the Antarctic. I'm going to go bike across a frozen lake in Russia. This is the Kevin that I know. I don't know Kevin the architect as well as I know Kevin the crazy man out there doing very extreme challenges. And so what's the driver behind that? How did you get started in that?
Well, I mean, first, it's self-expression in many ways. I used to see them as completely opposite. And, the phone would ring and it'd be like, who am I? Like, am I like, hey, Kevin Vallely architect? Or is it like, yo, bro, I'm the dude, adventure guy. And then I realized actually it's very much the same. It's a personal expression of something that's important to you. And, but how it started for me was, strangely, actually, as a kid. I was 9 years old, and my brother and I got separated from our parents in a department store. I'm from Montreal. In downtown Montreal, we had been downtown. It was, I think, a Thursday or Friday night, and 9:00 at night. And this overzealous security guard decided to kick us out of the department store because we got separated from our parents, rather than help us find our parents. I was 9, my brother was 5. And we come I don't remember how we got into town. I didn't really know where home was, but we came in by bus or metro, the subway system in Montreal. And all I remember was being outside really cold, not really dressed for the cold because we would have traveled by bus or something. And it was snowing heavily, it was dark, and cars were everywhere. And I remember this feeling like, oh my God, I want to find my mom, right, and my dad, and then my brother started to cry, and I remember him saying, "Kev, I want mommy." And then I realized Big Brother is like, well, I remember putting on a brave face and saying, "I'll get it. Don't worry, I'll get us home." And I just started to walk with him, holding his hand, and he. I guess that movement sort of eased his concern, and he trusted in me, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and off I went parading along like I knew what I was doing when I didn't. And I remember I started to walk, and then after a period of time, I realized I was going in the wrong direction, because I remember seeing this building. It's the Chateau Champlain in Montreal, if anyone is from Montreal, and it has these semicircular windows, the whole building, and we used to call it the cheese grater. And I remember seeing it, going, I know that building, and I know that building is not where home is. It's in the wrong direction. So I knew immediately. And then so I turned around and started walking in the other direction. And I, looking back on now, I would have crossed St. Catherine Street and I wouldn't have known St. Catherine Street, and I would have crossed de Maisonneuve Street and I wouldn't have known de Maisonneuve. But then I got to Sherbrooke Street and I recognized Sherbrooke Street. I remember going, to myself, I live near Sherbrooke Street, and maybe if I follow Sherbrooke Street, I can actually find home. And we're a long way from home. So I started walking. It was freezing cold. We'd slip into apartment buildings and warm up, but we kept walking and walking and walking. After hours, I finally saw Murray Hill Park. I remember it's where we would toboggan, and I knew, oh my God, I'm getting close to home. And then about half an hour later, I got home, and I remember at the time there was a cop car sitting in front of my house. And I remember thinking to myself, why is there a cop car in front of my house? Like being a 9-year-old, not having a clue. Of course, my parents had called the cops and were petrified and anxious. And I remember I really felt like I'd done something wrong in that. Like, oh my God, here we are coming home. And I remember it was this complete flip at the time, having my mom and dad being so happy to see me, the cops being happy to see us too. But I remember it was... they're so happy, and like, you know, how you took care of your brother and like how responsible, all this stuff, which was overwhelming to me. And in many ways it was the scariest moment of my life at that point, but it was also the most empowering. And it was really strange. Like it was really felt empowered by it. And I stepped up in many ways. So I always point to that as my first polar journey because shortly after that, I came up with this crazy idea that I wanted to ski to a pole. Like I wanted to ski to the South Pole, or ski to the North Pole. Like I just had this, I mean, I was an inner city kid living in Montreal.
Well, you're 9 years old.
9 years old. And
you're going to go see Santa Claus.
Well, yeah, maybe. But you know, it was just this idea, right? This idea of moving and just pushing your limits in some way and coming out the other end. I don't know what it was, to be honest with you, but I always look back at that moment as being my first expedition, and it really got me hooked on the idea of it. And it's an empowerment, and it builds, I guess, a self-confidence in yourself, and prioritizes things. It does so much to me as a sort of a reset button when I do these expeditions. But I always point to that as what started, that was the bug. That's what got me kind of hooked. But it took a lot of years before I'd ultimately ski to South Pole. It would be 35 years later before I did it, but I did do it.
And well, you've done many. I would say. I think you mentioned the one in Russia with your daughter.
We paddled.
You mentioned one in the jungle with the military.
With the military retracing.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. It was I discovered there was I was wanting to do a big adventure in Southeast Asia somewhere. And then I discovered this trail being rehacked through the jungles of northern Borneo. And it was called the Sandakan Death March. And it's a sordid story of the war that happened in the Second World War, that 2,750 troops were marched across this particular, on a death march across this particular trail. Only 7 would survive. And it was such a horrific chapter that most of them were Australian. And the Australian military, Australian government decided not to even publicize it. They just wanted to put it under, like, keep it quiet, because it was just so horrible. They didn't want to, bring it to the public eye so much, because it was such an awful chapter. But some historians were rehacking the trail through the jungles because it was lost to the jungle. And I got wind of that fact, and I said, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I hiked it? Like, that'd be a neat thing to do. It was just the first time it's being opened up again. And I contacted them and said, would it be possible if I came and did that? And they said, absolutely. And if you did, you'd be the first person since World War II to do that. So I set about a team, myself, a close friend as a photographer, and we had a video crew coming with us as well.
What is the name of your close friend?
Frank Wolf.
Oh, Frank.
Okay. Yeah. And as a videographer, I was going to be, as photographer. I was writer, working for an outdoor magazine at the time. And we had a couple television guys come to film it. They didn't last ever. Another story, didn't last half of the first day because of the heat. But anyway, that aside, but the Australian military got wind of the fact we were going to do this. And they said, we'd love to send some troops with you guys. And would that be okay? And I said, of course.
Was that for training for them, or just?
No, it was as an honor for them. Like, this was a historic moment for the military. Like, it would be the first time that they would retrace it. And what made it really powerful was that so many members died on that journey soldiers had died on that death march. That after the war, reconnaissance parties went and found the bodies and were able to locate them and see where they were. And it was from little towns all over Australia. And it ends up that the guys who came with us, guys and one woman, they were able to identify someone who died on the trail from their little hometown. And so it became their mission out there to really be a representative for that person. And it was really powerful because it went from being just a trip where we were doing this kind of retracing to now like way heavy. And we stepped back, and I became very much a journalist watching this happen in many ways and writing about it. And every time we'd come to a spot that someone had died, that person who was tasked at doing it would read their bio and really honor them at that spot. It was really powerful. So it was an intense journey, over a lot more intense than I anticipated it would be, but it was also really, really powerful. And in the end, it's probably one of the most intense expeditions I've ever done. I wrote a lot about it. It got a lot of press. And to this day, it's still on, in terms of videos and stuff on YouTube. So many people watch it because, all from Australia, of course, there's a real connection to that story. So I really feel it was really kind of an honor to be able to bring it to light again and share, share that story, which is really an incredibly intense one.
There's been so many adventures that you've gone on, and we can probably get into detail on every single one of them. But like, there's some key ones that really stick out for me. One was the Northwest Passage, because I knew you at the time when you did it.
Yeah.
And so the planning and the prep that went into it, the fundraising you had to do, and then reading the book and looking at it. Like, when you read the book and you hear about the challenges that you faced in it, and for those listeners, I do recommend the book. We can look at, why you decided to write a book about it, and your experience with that. I'd like your thoughts on that, but also the notion that you didn't make it. And in my mind, my first reaction when I heard is like, you didn't make it. And it's like, is that a failure? Is that, and I personally, after I read the book, but knowing you, I'm like, this isn't a failure at all. This is fantastic. This makes for even a better story in my mind because of what you went through. Some of those, anyway, there's some key moments in the book, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone to encourage them to try and read it. But like, tell me about, this is one trip that I always kind of resonates with me, is like, there's something they're representing. I know you've got a world record for crossing the South Pole. I know that. We've also cycled our kids from Paris to Rome, but this one, it epitomizes, you plan for something, it doesn't go according to plan, and you gotta adapt. And anyways, do you want to?
Yeah, no, and I think it's a really important one. Fundamentally, it's around goals and purpose, and I think this is really important to reflect on with the expedition, but in what we do in day-to-day life and in terms of our business. It's always, so often goals and purpose are kind of aligned. You think it's the same thing. It's not. They're completely different. And that resonated strongly on that expedition, because the reason I did it was to bring awareness to the changes happening in the Arctic from climate change. End of story. That's why I was doing it. That was the purpose, to bring awareness to that issue. Because you got to understand, like 30 years before, the Northwest Passage was chalked and ice. Like, you couldn't travel through it. Like, it's, you need an icebreaker to go through it. I tried to row it in a 25-foot rowboat without sail or motor. Like, hold on a moment here. And the reason I did that was to get eyes on it. Like, if people thought, well, hold on a moment, like, you're doing what? How can you do that? And the reason I realized there's a power in that, because when I skied to the South Pole, we amazingly, when we were skiing in and finally broke the record, we garnered 1.5 billion media impressions. So go figure, like 1 in 5 people on the planet got wind of the fact that we broke the world record. It was fascinating. I was just blown away by the numbers. And a friend of mine, he said, you're on the front page of the Jakarta Post. I mean, it went viral. And I realized it was a real aha moment for me that there's a lot of power in and a really compelling adventure to get eyeballs on something, because there's just, wow, it's so unique, right? Now imagine if you attach something really important to it. And that was my aha. What happens if you row a 25-foot rowboat across the Northwest Passage, which is infamous body of water, which ice blocked, and you go across in a little boat and get out to the other end? What's that going to say about the changes happening up there? Like, and you get that many people watching and following, right? So that was the impetus behind it. So we went out there, and yes, there's not a lot of ice, but now an open ocean is a different body of water. It's not frozen. There's a lot more heat, and it changes the environment up there. We had a cyclone up there, and cyclones don't happen up there, but they did when we were there. And it was a scary place with crazy weather patterns, winds moving ways they typically didn't. And we were battered. We were out there for 55 days. We traveled almost 2,000 kilometers across the passage. We didn't make it to the other end. And the reason we didn't make it, we just ran out of time. It wasn't we ran into a big block of ice that couldn't move anymore. We just couldn't move because we were running out of time. It was getting dark, and it was starting to get cold again. We just ran out of time. So we failed in getting across the full passage, but we did not fail in getting a lot of eyes on our expedition.
Or getting out alive.
Oh, getting out alive, but that wasn't necessarily. I mean, obviously, that's an underlying purpose to the whole thing.
Don't underscore it. Wasn't there a night where the iceberg was going to pull you guys under?
Yeah, the sea ice. Yeah, we nearly got sucked under by a huge chunk of sea ice, and another point we nearly got thrown into the pack and really, escaped with the skin of our teeth. And it was sketchy. I mean, we were on the front page of the Vancouver Sun going like, guys nearly died, like it was like, it was sketchy. And things were happening up there. No one had done this, right? So we were learning as we went. Again, truly uncharted waters. Something we're all feeling these days, right? You just never know. But the one lesson I always came out with and that I discovered up there was so important. And it's something I think we all can take, we can learn from, I think, is control what you can control. Because there's some things you just have no control over. But controlling what you can control and focusing on that is the best you can do for yourself under the circumstances. And that's what we did. And you're learning. You make mistakes. You learn from that. I mean, it's petrifying in that environment, of course, because some of these mistakes are serious and scary and potentially lethal. But you learn from them and you don't make them again. And again, you control what you can. And now you make adjustments and do that. And that's the thing about adventure. And that's where I really love the connection. And you had alluded to earlier that I do this work with connecting the wild wisdom garnered in that adventure space back to the boardroom, is that it's totally relevant. I mean, it is the same thing on so many levels. It's just what we do is we're a high performing team in an incredibly uncertain, dangerous environment that has to perform, and your life depends on it. So in many ways, it's very similar in terms of interactions, putting together this team, being effective as a team. How do you do that? How do you make decisions? What's your guiding principles? How do you define goals? And, all this stuff, which is as relevant to an adventure team as it is to any other team. And that's where the connections are made. And I think with the Northwest Passage, it's a classic case of absolute uncertainty and moving forward anyway, and being afraid and overcoming that fear and trying to be courageous no matter what in that environment. I learned a lot out there about myself, and I learned a lot about why I do what I do, I suppose.
So let's take the notion of an adventure, planning for an adventure, executing an adventure, dealing with adversity and challenge and the unknown, taking and controlling what you can, and put that in front of a group of executives, type A personalities, eccentric personalities, alpha male, alpha female personalities, and then how do you work them through an exercise in the business realm? How do you get some people that are not used to not being in control?
Well, it's interesting. We use, so I work with a company called Peak Teams. And what we do is, it's really quite intriguing. It's a gamified learning experience, if you want to call it. It's
gamified?
Yeah, gamified, if you call it. It's an immersive learning experience. Mm-hmm. And, but it's real. So what we do is, for example, on the Northwest Passage, we filmed it all. We had like 30 hours of film.
I've seen some clips.
Yeah, and it's real. So then we created scenarios that draw out really important lessons and create situations for this corporate audience that they become a team. So the way we started is, firstly, we have them, before they even head out on the Northwest Passage, they say, you're going to join us and you're going to be a team going across the Northwest Passage. And you have table teams. And before they even head out, they have to define success. What's success for them? And they're going to understand how are they going to make a decision in that environment. They're going to look at what goals they're going to try to achieve, and they're going to look at their guiding principles. They establish this. So as a team, they go and they methodically determine this, and they have this now as their sort of set agenda. Then they would put them into the environment. And this is all done through video. So you'll see a video for 2 or 3 minutes.
Like interactive, like you'll...
Well, interactive in the sense that they'll see a video. Now it's like, so what did you see? There may be a conversation around it, but then it's like, okay, now there's a scenario decision video. So what are you going to do? Like, it's like, okay, now you're confronted. This really happened. Bang. For example, with that big ice flow, suddenly we woke up on anchor with a massive ice flow stuck upon us.
So for the listeners, I think they need to better understand what you mean by on anchor, just because not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're a 25-foot rowboat in a storm on the Northwest Passage,
and the anchor's touched to the ground.
Yeah. The anchor's like 70 feet down. You throw an anchor out. We were about a kilometer offshore, and rather than being thrown up on shore, we were able to anchor and just survive this storm. And we went to sleep in our cabin. There's no ice around, and we woke up to ice around. Smashing against our a
bunch of banging.
Well, I woke up to banging, and this piece of ice was half the size of a city block, and it was on top of us. And it was like, what's happening? And you jump out and you see this huge piece of ice, and you're trying to retrieve your anchor now, but it's being pressed on top of you by the storm.
So you're being pulled down underwater.
Potentially, but you don't know at that moment. Yeah. Like, is this ice flow gonna? Because it came in so quick, maybe it's just going to rotate around us and. So you have a decision to make. What would you do? And this is one of the ones. Would you cut the anchor or not cut the anchor? Or wait to see what the ice flow will do, or cut the anchor? What do you
jump in the ocean?
Yeah, or jump in the ocean. You last 5 minutes, and then it's done, right? But here you are. You're very remote. But if you cut the anchor, so pros and cons. Like you cut the anchor. Well, firstly, see what the ice flow will do. The ice flow might actually rotate around you. You can keep that anchor. And if you did cut the anchor, well, now you're going to be thrown up on shore, and you potentially destroy your boat, right? But if you do cut the anchor, at least you're controlling what's happening here. You're not just letting it do whatever it wants to do. And you potentially could get another anchor in a tiny little community, maybe further on, if you can keep yourself off the shore. But can you keep yourself? I don't know.
I think for the listeners, it's important to realize in the heavy wind areas, whether you have a boat where it's really hard, without an anchor, you have to bring the boat onto land every time you want to stop paddling.
But you can't. Like we have a 2,500 pound rowboat. You can't do that.
Right.
Like,
so
it'll be destroyed.
This emphasizes the importance of keeping the anchor.
Yeah, it's not a kayak here. It's huge ship.
Giving up an anchor is a big deal.
Oh, it's life and death. So what do you do? And we had this big debate. We were having a debate on the boat about this when I was at the bow, and then I was watching the bow getting sucked under the ice flow as we were having the conversation. So I cut the anchor because we had to, because if I didn't wait another 10 seconds, it would be under the darn thing. Only afterwards did I calculate the weight of it. It was about 40 feet thick, and it's really dense ice. It's about the weight of a medium-sized aircraft carrier. So that's the weight that was pushing on top of our little 25-foot rowboat. We had no hope. So it was a right call. But then we were in this crazy situation where we were fighting for our lives to stay offshore and not destroy our boat. But again, we controlled what we could control. And in the end, it was the right call, because otherwise it would have even been more disaster. But it's a really interesting one, because there it comes around to what's fun about these journeys. And we do a lot more than just the Northwest Passage with this particular work, is that it tests people and it puts them out of their, as you were saying, you have a group of C-suite people potentially often, and it's like, what can you tell me that I don't already know? Is there maybe their attitude at first, but the reality is they're now in a world that they don't know anything about, and they're looking through a completely different lens, and their real personality starts to come out. And it's an interesting one, because then you can pause them and say, okay, let's have a moment around, and you connect it back to their business. And in situations where there's really a debate and people aren't agreeing, and very often that happens on these things. They can't make a decision as a team. Like, what are you going to do? They can't decide. It's like, what do you do in your job, when you get to a situation like this, how do you do that? How do you make a decision as a team?
I think that you've raised an interesting point, because I remember doing a course, an ethics course, when I first got my CPA, and they had us do this adventure test where you crash a plane into this moat area that's full of iron ferrite. I can't remember the name of it, but it causes your compass to not work. So you don't really know what direction to go in. And they ask you in a pecking order, here's what's in the crash. What things would you keep in priority order? And there's like 10 to 15 different things. And then they ask you to sit around the table in a group of 6 or 7 people, and you collectively have to decide what are the top 10 things. And more times than not, the people, when you have more heads around the table working together, you get a better product and you're a higher success of survival. But when you're in a situation where you can't agree and work together, people are like, I'm out of here, I'm going to go off on my own, or you just can't get people to collaborate. I can see that in a smaller sense, where we were frustrated with each other's decisions on how to prioritize. Again, something very, not necessarily to your level, and this was a 2-hour course that we did, but I thoroughly enjoyed seeing and going through that exercise. But I can see how people who aren't used to being in a non-leadership role and just accepting someone else's opinion on something because that's the collective will.
Well, it's interesting. That's why before they set out to make a decision, say that particular decision, we've had them come up with their decision-making model. So they're a group of 6 people, potentially 5 people at a table, but they determine their decision-making model now. So what are you going to do? Sometimes it's like, majority rules, or the leader decides. But then you have to choose a leader at your table, if that's the case. Or it could be that you maybe disagree, but ultimately you align and you commit. But that means that if it goes wrong, that decision, the people that weren't necessarily agreeing with that decision don't turn around and say, yeah, I told you so. Like, you don't do that. And that's toxic, and that's really, really bad, right? In terms of a decision making, in terms of a high performing team. And the interesting thing is that it's something you really have to think about on these adventures, because they've done a study on polar adventurers. And I found, the Northwest Passage was very similar in terms of really, really a testing environment, is that they found that the vast majority of polar explorers, when they reach the end of whatever they're doing, North Pole, South Pole, or whatever else, treat each other much more similar to inmates in prison than they do actually colleagues. They hate one another. Everything, because you're stuck in a tiny tent for a month or two with the same people, unwashed. You watching them, everything, the way they eat, the way they brush their teeth, anything like that, because it drives you nuts, right? You have to know this going into it. So you have to know that.
Interesting. Wouldn't have thought of that.
Oh, it's incredibly intense.
Did you find people naturally gravitated to particular roles or particular responsibilities?
It's nice to
like when you put the business people in a context and you challenge them and how decisions are made, did you find that more often than not you had key individuals stepping up for leader, or did people did that mismatch?
Well, sometimes, yeah. Sometimes they do, because someone may have experience in that world and they say, oh, we'll make them the leader. But no, interestingly not. Most of the time not. We sometimes challenge them to it, saying, okay, on the team, because we often incorporate money into it, and there's a certain cost per day, and we make it a kind of a fun gamified thing, and you're running out of money. It's like, oh, how are we going to budget here? And we say, okay, well, someone needs to be the CFO, right? Or whatever, the treasurer, whatever you want to call it in your team. Someone needs to take care of the money. Another person, actually, we give them roles, and sometimes with various of these particular learning experiences, some are very specific that way, where they are given roles. Each person is given a specific role. But it's interesting as it works is that very often it's, even though you may have the CEO of the company at a table, they don't necessarily take on that role now anymore. They just become part of however that team works, right? They are no longer the boss in that group, because now this is a gamified experience, right? They're not the boss of that group. They're part of this team. And are they a leader? Maybe they have the least amount of experience in this. So no, they step back. So it's fascinating to watch. But I remember the power of it once for me was on we have a mountain climbing simulation. that we call Reach for the Summit. And I won't mention the name of the company, but it's a major company, which I guarantee everyone on this call would know. And we were talking to the C-suite, and there was only like 16 people, right? It's just the C-suite of a company that is 7,000 plus people. And I remember it was starting, and in the back of the room, the CEO, everyone was sitting at the tables except the CEO. And he was standing in the back of the room with his arms crossed, looking at it. And it was like, oh God, this is going to be tough, because you could see he did not buy in. And maybe it was the CHRO had brought us in. I don't know who brought us in for the job, but clearly he didn't, because he was not into it. And he's like, what am I wasting my time? And I was like, oh God, this is going to be a tough 2 days. Well, within an hour and a half, he was at his table with his team and totally engaged. Good. And at one point, he paused the entire room and said, okay, folks, I've never shared this story with you, this personal story with you, but I'd like to share it now. And I remember going to myself, bang, we got it. Like, there's job done. Because this is the whole point of these things, is getting people talking and getting them to step out of their shell. And because all the answers, we don't have answers. When we come into a room with this particular company, we can step into any company. We can go into the big tech companies, you name it, whatever they are. I don't know what they do at all. They know what they can answer everything, right? They can answer any question. It's just a question of them being able to talk to one another and figure that out. And that's the whole point of it, is getting that conversation, getting the communication between people. So that, I think it's a really effective way of doing it.
I reflect back on the trip that we did. And for those that don't know Kevin or myself, we were sitting over dinner one time thinking about doing an adventure bike trip with our families. And I think Brenda, my wife, and you were like, let's do a cross Europe trip. And then the notion Paris to Rome came in. And I thought, well, at the time, I didn't really fathom the amount that was involved, but we collectively came together with, we're going to go with a common goal, a common vision to do this collectively. Now, I'm a bit of I'm one of the C-suite guys, and I like to make decisions, but we all knew as a group of 8, 4 kids and 4 adults, we're all working together. I loved the role of the caboose. I absolutely, I was the mule, because they just kept adding more water. But I love that role. I love the role of the mechanic. When there's a problem, I'm the fixer. I did not need to navigate this crew. I didn't need to be the one, where are we going to go? Where do we turn? I just wasn't comfortable because, one, it's not my domain. But it worked because I knew collectively we were going with a common goal of getting where we needed to get to. I remember some of those hard days. The Piano Cruxia day, we had five mountain passes that day.
The 20% grade.
I didn't think I was going to make it. And the kids are coming back and cheering us on. You made a comment there about how the prison mentality. And I would say that there was only, I think, one time when we felt like we just needed a little space from each other. But in no time did I feel that as we were collectively going across this together. I knew there would be hard times, but I always knew that we were trying to do this together, and we all wanted the same outcome. So in the end, that was a big success trip in my mind. We came back
huge
with huge legs anyways, controlling those things around. That was a great adventure. One that we planned for too. There was a lot of build up and a lot of planning. We did a test bike ride out to South Surrey together, just to make sure. There's a lot of planning that goes into these things. And like the paddling of the Northwest Passage, or like trying to ascend a mountain with a bunch of executives, you can only do so much planning, but you can't lose your shit, I guess you say, is you have to kind of stop, collectively come up with, where are we trying to get to? What can you control? So are there any situations where you're in where you kind of felt like where you lost control of the room?
Not professionally in terms of these environments. No, never lost. Good. No.
I wouldn't think so, but I was just trying to think.
And people are professional, right?
Yeah.
And it, in a sense, depending on the room, no, never. Actually, it's always been good. That's always worked out really well. I thought you were going to ask whether you've more like in the adventure world, whether I lost it there.
Well, I'm
probably
virtually
not.
certain people, not yourself, but I imagine like there were that you paddled with some people and they said like we're not going to do this. This is too much, and they pull out, right?
Yeah,
like,
and totally support that. And people make a decision based on, it's just too much, and fair enough. And I get it. And again, it's one of those. I think you don't step into a major expedition and expect to be able to pull it off if you've not done a whole bunch of minor ones before. There's a stress inoculation, right? It's like resilience. Like you have to slowly build up to something. You can't be really people collapse or have trouble with something is when it's just overwhelming to them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to kind of like building a muscle, if you can get stronger and stronger at it and slightly harder and a little bit more challenging, certainly with adventures, start small, build up, then you can actually undertake some major ones with a certain level of confidence that you can pull it off because you've done it.
Mm-hmm.
You've done it. And I mean, I feel that now. Like in a few days, I'm heading north.
I was just going to say, I want to let's transition to what's coming up. Tell us about this adventure. What got you onto it?
I've always wanted to explore the remotest parts of our country, or the planet for that matter. And really, our country is the remotest part of the world up north. Ellesmere Island in the high Arctic it's like Mars. Like no one's been there. Like it really is out there. Very few people have ever traveled there. It's the 10th largest island in the world. There's 129 people that live in a tiny little community called Grise Fjord at the southern tip. And at the northern tip, there's a military base called Alert, where I think there's 56 people. It's the furthest, most northern, permanently inhabited, if you want to call it a community, it's 56 people. It's a military base in the world. It's really up there. And we're doing a big traverse across it. It's going to be about 600 kilometers. And traveling a line across a landscape that no one has done before, from my understanding. Myself and Ray Zahab, my teammate, who I also skied to the South Pole with, who I also crossed Lake Baikal with.
Your second wife.
Yeah, my second wife. And exactly. But we're doing a major traverse, but we're doing it. It's a tough one. It's at the coldest time of year, so it's going to be minus 40 or colder with wind. It could be minus.
Right now is the coldest time of year up there for them?
Yeah. Ooh. This is the coldest time. Yeah. And it's real cold, like real cold. We were up in Baffin there a couple of years ago, and the wind chill, it was minus 49.7. We had a special thermometer, and the winds were 100 kilometers per hour. So the wind chill was minus 85 Celsius. And it's kind of hard to describe how cold that is. Like, it's really hard to describe, but bare skin starts to get frostbite almost instantaneously when exposed to it. And
when the wind chill, right?
It just even, yes, because of the wind blowing on. But regardless, minus 49.7, you're getting frostbite real quick no matter what. But it's so cold that I bit into a fig Newton and my front tooth snapped off right at the gum, to give you a sense. And I've been working on that for the last 2 years, trying to get an implant. But literally, that's how cold it is. Everything gets real brittle, very, very cold. So yeah, we'll be facing that coming up. And add to that, you have predators, you have polar bears coming around that want to eat you. So you have to set up a perimeter fence with bear bangers and stuff, hoping that would kind of scare it off when you're sleeping at night. But you also have to carry weaponry to defend yourself if that happens. And there's wolves, and it really is full on. It's a full on expedition, which I would never even have dreamt about undertaking 20 years ago, because I wouldn't have had the experience to deal with it. But now I feel like I do, that I can day in, day out, I can get through this thing. I know how to survive in the cold. I know how to keep big critters at bay, hopefully, and how to take care of myself in a really, really tough environment. So this is very much my last, I'd say, extreme adventure for sure. I'm 60, for God's sakes. It's like, I can't keep doing it, but I'm 60 and I'm still doing it. So
but I've also, again, I know you quite well, and I know what you're capable of. You can throw the age out there, but you're actually extremely fit, and I'm not worried that your body can't make this. So for the listeners, maybe you want to You said you always attach the kind of like the ideology behind why you're doing this to the adventure. The adventure, doing something out there, high profile, crazy adventure in an extreme environment. What's the other side of it?
Well, I mean, this one strongly is actually connecting. It's connecting the classrooms because so many people have never even heard of Ellesmere Island, and it's Canada. It's really important, and it brings up big questions around Arctic sovereignty. Right now, our current situation is that our archipelago of islands up there, there's water between them, and that is. There's not great distances between these islands. Sometimes you can see the other island from the other, and it's considered our waters. Or Canada says, well, that the north is our land, our waterway. Yet countries like the U.S. Say no, it's an international waterway. We can plow it. We can.
Gulf of America.
Yeah, literally. Well, that attitude, right? But now with this new administration, but the attitude is that we can send a ship through if we want. We don't even have to ask you. And the interesting thing there is, one thing if it's the U.S., I suppose I would say, there'd be a certain amount of responsibility, but it could be anyone. It could be Russia. It could be North Korea. It could be anyone. And the problem is they're really challenging waters up there, quite shallow, not charted well. And what happens if you get a problem? Like if it happens to be oil tankers coming through, it'll destroy one of the most sensitive and ecosystems.
It would never flush through. It'd be there forever.
No, ever. But it's our water, so it brings up all sorts of other questions.
Yeah.
So for me, the cool thing about this is that through Royal Canadian Geographic Society, CanGeo Education, we're connected with over 25,000 classrooms on this thing. So we are going to be doing a live feed from up there with a Starlink that connecting to classrooms.
We'll put a link of where people can dial in and listen to this adventure or hear more about the adventure on the podcast. But for the listeners, do you want to let them know what that's going to be, or do you know that?
Yeah, well, I mean, simply now, easiest way is just, it's highArcticJourney.com. highArcticJourney.com. Okay. www.
High as in H-I-G-H.
Yeah, high as in H-I-G-H, Arctic, journey.com. And that is our website. And from there, you can link to actually seeing us traveling across the landscape. And then we're getting kids to ask us questions when we're out there. So there's an opportunity to mail us stuff. And we're remote. You got to understand how remote we are.
Email, right?
Email, yes. Email, not mail.
Post office comes by.
Yeah, I know. They bring in the reindeer. They say the posties go everywhere. Well, put the challenge to them. But email them. And but it's pretty cool. And we did that when I remember doing that in the South Pole and like answering questions every night, sitting in my tent for kids that were asking us questions. So it's a really cool way for the kids to be engaged and learning about the environment, because and we create a lesson plan after the fact. That they can follow through on. So it's like, not only do they learn about the Arctic, they learn about Arctic sovereignty, they learn about the people that live there, they learn about the Inuit that live there and their traditions, and they've survived up there for thousands of years, and it's one of the most inhospitable places on the planet. Fascinating stuff. And it's Canada.
Well, and let's put it in perspective. We got 600 or 700 kilometers, you say? 600, 700?
Probably 600.
600 kilometers. You're going to have these sleds, these snowmobiles take you across one way?
Yeah.
Back way?
They're going to take us out there, and we're coming back by a route. But they're just dropping us.
So you're going to arrive. It's probably going to take you a few days to get there and to set up and get everything kind of together. You're going to sled across the whatever you call
on the sea ice overland to get to our so-called start point
location, and that's up on the northern point. But this will be on your website, I imagine.
Yeah, it's all on the website.
And then you're going to ski effectively.
A remote line, overland
in minus 40 with 100 kilometer winds.
We don't know what it's gonna be like, but we just know that it's gonna be cold. Yeah,
wolves.
Muskox.
Sounds amazing.
Well, it is really, though. I mean, yes, there's those. If you dwell on the danger parts, it can seem really bad. But the fact is, though, there's moments where the wind's down. It's maybe minus 30. It doesn't feel that bad. You're skiing along, And
Montreal's made quite an impression on you because most people do dwell on those points.
Yeah.
Because
But
they tend to be
you
the
actually
most
get
glaring
warm, right?
red flags right there.
But it's magic. It's a magic environment, and you realize,
Yeah.
wow, there's no one has been here before. I bet you there'll be spots where we could say, like, maybe no one's ever been here. I'm sure they have, but not a lot. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty neat idea. And there's one spot we'll be going by. We're going through an ancient forest. Like, you understand, this is high Arctic, right? There's nothing. Like, it's just open wide. Like, there's no trees.
The minus 40.
Way.
You had me at minus
tree
40.
line is like thousands of kilometers below. It's just rolling in white. But you go through an ancient petrified forest. The stumps there for millions of years old, from an old rainforest that once was on Ellesmere
Oh,
Island.
of course, it's frozen. It wouldn't biodegrade, right?
No, it's stone. It's stone now. It's actually stone. It's not frozen. It's actually stone. It's petrified, millions of years old. So it's fascinating. Like, I don't know whether we'll see it, but stuff like that intrigues me. You realize how things change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have this opportunity to explore a place where really no one goes. And that's what adventure and exploration is all about, in my mind, is creating some excitement in learning and discovery. And that kids love that stuff. And that's where there's real power in that. And that's why this one is really all about sharing that and having that ability to do so.
Do you think I'll write a book about this one?
I don't know. Probably not. Maybe. We'll see. It depends on what happens out there. Yeah, I'll certainly write about it. Whether it's a book is another thing, but I'm certainly going to share it.
Again, I've seen your writing. You're a very good writer. I do enjoy it. You got the gift of the Irish gab.
I'll be certainly be speaking about it. But I will definitely be. We're planning on filming it, so we're hoping to actually create a little doc out of it, a little documentary.
Well, we will have you back to go through and hear about the adventure and the hardships and the celebrations.
Hopefully celebrations.
There will be. For sure. Getting back is
a celebration unto itself.
I would say
there lies the key, right?
Say so. So, Kevin, it's been a real pleasure, and I wish you the best on this. You are definitely of a different mindset than myself, and I'll summarize it. I remember when you and I doing a speaking gig to members of my firm. We did one of these morning breakfast seminars, and I started off by saying you and I went out for a run, and we were running up there in Whistler, and I saw this, but maybe it could be a trail, but maybe just animals go up there. And I look up there, and the first reaction I said, well, I wonder where that goes. Yeah, I don't know where that goes. I best not go. I wouldn't go up there because I don't know where that goes. And you're looking at that and saying, I don't know where that goes. Let's go check it out. Like, they want to go up this hill. And I'm like, this complete 180 perspective on the unknown. And so, again, I'm wired more on the defense and protect and not necessarily surge forward. And you are definitely out there. And so wish you the best on this, Kev.
Thank you. Yeah. Awesome.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Hindsight. If there's one takeaway from today, it's that every challenge, every misstep, and every breakthrough adds to the wisdom that shapes our future decisions. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might appreciate these insights. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and don't forget to have fun in your journey.